All right, friends, welcome. It is week 5. Can you believe it? We are 1 week, I repeat, 1 week away from starting our exam period time. We're going to talk a little bit about that today. And then just to let you guys know, because again, I'm out next week. So just want to make sure you guys are prepared. You're going to have Robert, who is awesome. He's going to be the one teaching you. So I've met with Robert, told him that you guys are incredible, that you ask great questions. And so that'll be really fun, I think, for you guys also to see another voice. Um, and so that way, he might do something different than me. Both are okay, right? Just as a reminder, there are multiple ways to do the same thing in coding. And I might do it one way because it makes more sense to me. You might do it another way. But I promise, at the end of the day, we will all be better for it. Just as a reminder, housekeeping, you got discussion questions due Sunday. This past week was um, a official check-in, and I did see on the official check-in letter that it says, hey, just as a reminder, if you've got academic probation, blah 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 blah. That is confusing, and I'm sorry if that at all confused any of you guys. That's not an indication of your current status. Current status will be at the top. Um, it's just as a reminder, in the same way that I sent out our email today, and under the discussion questions, I say, hey, as a reminder, if you miss 5, same sort of thing, right? You guys are crushing it. You guys, I mean, somebody yesterday was like, wow, I'm really impressed with your class. You guys are doing great. But if that came on, or if you kind of got nervous, that is not an indication of how you're doing. At the top is it'll say like, hey, here's your current status. And then that is the truth there. And that's just more of a, hey, just a reminder, don't get on that. So you will not have an official check-in on Monday. You'll still have a check-in, but it will not be an official check-in where academic probations are. It'll be the following Monday. So week 7 will be that. Now that is a chaos week. I just want to alert you, friends, and just kind of have you get to thinking. We are done. We are in week 5, which is crazy. You only have one assignment. So if you're falling behind, that's okay. That's kind of why we just do one assignment this week. This is the week you need to, and you really need to step it up, and you need to do your assignments. Uh, Life happens. I fully understand that. But next week, just so you know, you do have 3. Now, these are building upon each other. So it's not like it's 3 big assignments and they're just prep for the exam. But you do need to have all of take this week of week 5 to really catch up. The other reason is because if you have less than 90% of your core assignments completed from week 5, because technically week 6 does not finish until Sunday. So it's all week 5 and prior. So there's total of 11. If you do not have 10 complete, you will not get a code this first weekend. Please, 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 please do that. Make sure that you're at 90%. Take this weekend. The last thing you want is to try to scramble these next couple weeks or these next week and a half. Because as a reminder, the last day to start an exam is this Tuesday of week 8. This says first retake opportunity. I don't really adhere to that because I think that maybe your life is busy and you guys are adults. And so maybe the weekend is not the best time for you. So at some point, week 7, we will try to get all the exams graded. And then if you need to retake, I don't anticipate that, but if you need to retake, we will give you a retake code upon that. Unless there's really something that, hey, I really think it would be beneficial if we met or you met with Gray or Paul before you did this, because I think that there's some core misunderstandings. Then maybe we'll have you meet and then give an exam code. But if it's just like, hey, you just missed it, you're close, we'll give you an exam code immediately. So you don't really have to adhere to this time. I'm a big advocate. You get 3. You get up to, you get up to 3 opportunities. So I want to make sure that you guys are using those. So I'm not going to make you wait until Friday and then, potentially do it over the weekend. And then I have to scramble and grade and then try to get you another one. I'm not, it's caused me stress, caused you stress. We're not doing that. So once you get it graded, once it's graded, you will get your retake code if you have to retake. Again, hopefully you do not, but you will. But again, you cannot get that until you do 90% of core assignments. So you've got to have 10 core assignments completed. So if you're sitting right now at 60%, which means that you're technically falling behind, but you're not within academic probation, which I don't think anybody is, so great job there. Then, okay, that's fine. You just need to do 4 of them by the end of next week in order for you to even qualify for the exam. Now, one thing to note is when the exam codes are sent out, they are sent out, right? By like 5 o'clock Friday. We are not, instructors are not working on the weekends, right? So if you are late and you want to do it on Saturday, TAs cannot give out a code. It is just instructors. So if you miss it on Friday, unless you have some weird situation, then come talk to me. And obviously I will be as open and accommodating as I possibly can. Plus you have something on this day, you're going to have to wait until Monday in order for to get a code. So, unfortunately, if you Slack me or not Slack, but if you Discord me on a Saturday and like, can I please get a code? I'm not going to check it on because I work-life balance. I'm not going to check it. So make sure that is next Friday. Again, I won't be here, but Robert will handle all of this. You'll get this code. You'll have everything you need. So yeah, please make sure you get to at least 10 core assignments, which is 90% of the 11. Cool. And then these ones, I would definitely say before you take the exam, I would really encourage you to do product manager. It'll help you if you can do product manager and what we're going to build in class, then you should be A-okay. Any questions on sort of the next couple of weeks and what we have going on today? Today, we're going to be talking about sort of MongoDB, and we are going to talk about modularization of our server folder and sort of breaking that out if we have time. And then we'll break it out today and we'll go through some of the files. I'm anticipating we don't get through all of the files. And then tomorrow we'll finish that and then start implementing our CRUD applications. And then we'll actually start building. I will introduce on Thursday. I'll introduce the project that we're going to be building. And we'll actually start building that on Thursday. And so we will be building, kind of finishing up anything, starting the build on Thursday. And then that's what you guys will do Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday is build this entire project that is wildly similar, cough, cough, to the exam. Not going to do the black belt stuff, but is wildly similar to the exam. So please make sure that you guys are at least watching these lectures as well. Any quick questions on kind of what to expect? Again, I am out of office the entire week. I should probably change that color. No, I can do that later. Okay. That looks terrible. Perfect. Okay. You guys will do it. I promise you guys will crush it. You do have one core assignment, Jokes API. So please make sure that you get that done. Okay, so we talked about our introduction to our backend server. We had a pretty busy day on Thursday. So what I thought is, and I just want to say thank you guys for everybody that did fill out the class survey. It's really helpful for me. I do go in and read every single one. So it's really helpful for me to see. And some of the things were, hey, I would really appreciate it if we could, I was a little bit of just a robot and you guys led me through this. So what my thought is for the next 10 minutes, let's go ahead and set up my back end. And you guys lead me into creating a back end from creating the server folder to all of the files associated. So feel free to come off mute. Feel free to put it in chat if you want. If I'm going to build my backend, what are some things I need to do? We're just going to talk about the base stuff, and then we're going to talk about MongoDB, and then we're going to modularize it. But what is the first thing I need to do? Great, Nandor, I need to create a new folder. So I'm just going to come in here and not create a file. I'm going to create a folder. And what am I going to call it? Okay, Jared, I squatted. Now what? Different backend. Oh my gosh, dead. Okay. I literally squatted. How embarrassing. Okay. And it's recording. I hate myself. Okay. So we have this server folder. Now, what am I going to do within this server folder? What's my next steps? Okay. We're going to have a client folder, Christian. Yeah, exactly. We will. We're not going to worry about the front end right now, but yes, we would have that. Express. What am I going to do with Express? I need to install Express. Okay. Before I install anything, I think Philip's kind of got the right answer. Keep saying nom, but I need to, let's go.
Stupid autocorrect, man.
I know. I figured at first, I was like, you
I'm like, nom nom.
okay. So first I need to npm init dash y, right? I need to initialize my package JSON. Oh, I messed up, right? Okay. So let's do, that's in lecture one. So I'm going to remove. I just removed it. I messed up because I'm not in my server, right? And the way we remove a file is we just say rm. The rm-rf is when we have a folder. We're removing a folder, right? But because I'm just removing a file, I can just say rm and we can see no longer there. Great. So now I need to cd into server. Now this is where I'm going to npm. I can just go up. npm init dash y. Perfect. I've created that. Now that that file exists, now I can install everything I need. So I'm going to say npm install express. Perfect. Great job, guys. I would need to, if I hadn't already had this in a parent folder, which I do, then you're right, Philip, I would need to git init. Great. Nandor, I do need to install Mongoose and cores. Now, I'm not going to get to cores yet because we're going to get to that. But yes, I would need to npm install Mongoose. We'll get to cores probably Thursday when we start, or Monday or Thursday when we start connecting the two, or Tuesday, either this Thursday or next Tuesday. Okay, so I've created those. I've got my package JSON. I do need to create a get ignore, or just like Nandor said, I could have one get ignore and the entire thing, but I have to say go into this folder. So server slash get ignore or server slash npm node modules. ILS. Okay. I've got this. I don't see a get ignore, but that's okay because it's here because it's being ignored, right? So I'm gonna go in and I'm gonna say node modules. Perfect. Again, if we just had like a parent, then I could say something like server slash node modules, and I would go into my server folder and say, then look for the node modules. But this is fine for right now. Exactly. I need to create a server JS, and somebody put it in there, and I'm really proud of you, whoever said that. It is touch. So it's touch for, this is for git bash, touch server.js. Perfect.
Quick question.
Yeah.
On your get ignore, do you need a slash in front of the node modules or no?
You do not.
No. Oh, okay. I had that. Okay.
I don't believe so. Because all the slash would say is, I think in this structure, go to node modules, but I think it would interpret that as well.
Do we always have to have node modules there?
Do, yeah. Anytime you're dealing with an npm package, right? Then you will like Express and Mongoose, you will have node modules. That's just for JavaScript to run.
I mean, in the get ignore.
Oh, again, if you had like, if we had an entire folder, so like this is our lecture. If out here I had a dot get ignore, ignore, then I could say server slash node modules. But do I always want to delete them? Yeah, for sure. You do always want to, or sorry, ignore them. Yeah, you definitely do. Okay. Great. So far. Okay, so now I've created everything. If I'm going to go into my server.js, what are some things I need to put? Yep, exactly. Const express equals require express. Copilot. Copilot already did it. So I said const app equals express. What's the third one that's optional that I could do? I don't need to, but I could do it.
Port.
Port, right? I could say const port equals, I don't want to use 3000. I'm going to use 8000 because React is on 3000, right? So I'm going to do that. And then we had it where we did a app.get, right? That had a rec res. This is just saying, hey, we are just going to have this basic functionality. And my last thing I need, what is the last thing I need? Again, I don't want to press enter because Copilot's going to show it. Listener, yeah. Spill water all over myself. I'm going to say app.listen. I'm going to pass in the port. And then I'm just going to say listening on port, whatever. I think on the platform, it just says listening on port 8000. This message can be anything you want, right? Because now when I spin it up, I'll be able to see example app listening at localhost 8000 or whatever I want, right? It can be like unicorns and cupcakes or rock. It doesn't matter. As long as I see it, cool, good to go. So I'm gonna come here. I'm in my server. What are some things, or there's two options of me running this server. What is one option? NodeMon. And how would I do that, Zachary? Or I've already installed. So Timo, one thing to know is once you do the install -G NodeMon, that means you're installing it globally. So that means you only have to install it one time, right? So I could just say NodeMon server. So the file I wanted to run, server.js. And now we see example app listening, localhost 8000. We are good to go. I do control C if I want it to be done. What's the other way I could do it?
Watch.
Yeah, exactly. It's watch, right? So say node -- watch server dot, and I didn't have to download anything. Oh, I had an issue because I did server comma JS. Watch, same thing, right? Example app listening. So either one is working. So now if I were to go to localhost 3000, but I make it an 8. We get hello world, which is when we go here. So just localhost 8000. This is what we're sending back. Cool. Great. That's awesome. Now we're going to talk more in depth about this. But before we do that, because we're going to open up our, we're going to modularize this, right? Because we're not going to keep everything in our server JS in the same way that we don't have everything in our app JS, right? It makes sense that we're going to break things out. Anybody have any idea on why it would make sense to not have everything in this one file? Like just thinking of a real world application, what would be a way or a reason to why we wouldn't want to do that? Readability. Yeah, absolutely.
Will it make it slower?
Sorry, Alex, I didn't quite hear you.
Will it make it slower?
Not necessarily slower. But I see a lot of stuff in the chat. That's a good thought though, because you're like, oh, it has to load everything all at once. Could, right? If we don't need something, if we wanted to, it's called lazy loading. So saying, hey, I want to do this later or only do this on this certain thing. But it is a lot of stuff. A lot of stuff of what people are saying. So multiple people can edit a file. That's normal. That's fine. You would just create a branch on GitHub and edit the same file. That part's not an issue, but think about when we're trying to problem solve and our code's not working. If I know where all of my, let's say I've got users and pets, right? And I'm connecting the two. Well, if I know where all of my pet stuff is, and I know that something on my pet side's not working, well, I can go there and it's a lot easier for me to go and find, okay, my pets, my routes. Okay, cool. There's that. That's the issue, and problem solving there. Compared to if I have everything on one big file, I've got to search and find where in this file is that one method, right? And so by breaking it up, same thing with components on React. There's a great question, I think by Jared in Office Hour, which unfortunately I didn't record. And it was, why would we, do we put everything in app.js or when do we put everything in components? And I said, lean on the idea of putting everything in a component as much as you can, because it helps when we're saying, okay, our nav bar is not working. Well, is it something in our app.js? Is it partly in our, here, there, everywhere? But if we have it in a component, I can just go into where is that specific code live? Then I can problem solve. That's much, much easier to do than having what we call a monolithic So we're going to create a modularized application, meaning that it's spread out. When we have everything together, it's known as a monolithic app. Everything's just all kind of there, right? And so we want to make sure that we are breaking that up as much as we can, modularizing it so that way we can problem solve much, much faster. Yeah, Nando, I love that. Big project equals big workflow, which equals big chaos. We love that. We don't love that. We don't want chaos. Okay. Before we jump into that, I want to talk about MongoDB because this is going to be our database. And I think before we modularize, though in the platform, it modularizes first. I think there's some files in there that we're going to want to walk through and see. And it's going to make a little bit more sense when we talk about Mongo. So that's what we're going to do today. Let's talk about MongoDB. And then we're going to kind of experience a little bit of MongoDB. I'm going to show you an actual schema, or sorry, I'm going to show you an actual database, an actual collection of this, and then a specific document. A schema is within SQL, or a database is in Mongo. So those are the naming differences here. Before we jump into what does it look like, there is some installation here. So feel free and please do install MongoDB. If you choose to install Mongo Atlas, okay, that's fine. There's just some different things, some different workflows you're gonna have to do. I would say, especially if it's your first time and you don't have a ton of experience, just follow this on the platform, because Atlas is an easy transition after. So make sure you get to understand it. So on the platform, it talks about sort of MongoDB, why we use it. It's what we call a NoSQL database. Now in the office hour, I kind of go in depth, maybe a little too in depth on the cloud computing, and then how we get from SQL to NoSQL, which stands for not only SQL. Which is right there. And so this is a not only SQL database, which it's also known as being semi-structured, right? So we can give some structure, we can give some sort of a layout, which we will, but it allows for some more flexibility, right? If I add in that somebody's got a PhD, but somebody else doesn't, that's okay, right? We don't have to kind of like, are things not going to break if it doesn't fit this exact column or row or everything else, right? It's a very, very flexible environment. And so some of the big differences between the two is if you have any experience. Now, some of this I think says like you learned in Python. I'm sorry that there's that verbiage. They're supposed to be taking that out soon. So if you do see that and you've never taken Python, I'm very sorry. But if you did take Python or Java, then you understand what a join is, right? And you understand how you can connect things together. Now, we don't have any joins. We don't have any relationships. NoSQL is also called a non-relational database, meaning that we don't have any sort of relationships between entities, right? It is just, we're collecting a whole bunch of data. There's ways that we can, but we don't have any sort of join, which for some people, that's amazing because joins are kind of difficult in SQL, right? One thing to note is everything in a MongoDB database is simply a JSON object. Everything, right? This is the breakdown. If I have something in MongoDB, it is going to be a JSON object, which we've dealt with when we talked about APIs. We've dealt with these. So it shouldn't be anything that is new to you guys. There are some major differences. Again, I go through some of this stuff in office hour. This part was recorded, so I see that in the chat. There was just one question that I didn't record that was, talking about components versus like lean components versus everything being the app.js. Everything else, when I talked about the cloud and when I talked about the different types of databases, MySQL, Postgres, just structured versus semi-structured, all of that was recorded. So that'll be available to you. But here's some differences if you're kind of just looking for this. This is all based on if you're familiar with SQL. If you're not, that's okay, right? Like you don't have to be familiar with SQL in order to understand. I'm going to start saying relational and non-relational. Again, MongoDB is a non-relational database. So when I say non-relational, that's what I'm referring to. So the way a non-relational database or Mongo works is we call our database DB. Boom. Not a surprise there. Whereas SQL, we called it a schema. If we have a collection of related records, so let's say we're creating a project and we're having users and we're having pets, right? Those are going to be called collections, right? I've got a user collection. I've got a pet collection. And that instead of like a user table or a pet table, right? Those are called collections. These are just some verbiage, right? That's all that this is right here. It's, you're not going to use the word collection or document. This is just so when you're in a interview, you can actually talk like, oh yeah, this collection, or yeah, this document. And you're not saying, oh, this table, but they're like, it's Mongo, it doesn't have a table. So that's why we put this here. And at the end, each record we have, and we're going to look at this in a second, is just called a document, right? Just called a document. Cool. Now there is some different things within this, again, that we're dealing with tables versus collections, what we can do with that. We can use MongoDB. We can create collections. There's a couple of ways that we can use MongoDB to create records or to manage records, and deal with documents. Now, this one is important to know to an extent. This is going to be something that will help you. So if you have the opportunity to go through this, this will be helpful. This is also based on if you're using MongoDB in, if you're using MongoDB sort of in the terminal, or if you're doing, using it in certain ways. We're going to use some middleware. And so that middleware, which is called Mongoose, is going to do some of the heavy lifting for us. But this is if you're just doing sort of native or vanilla. You might hear native or vanilla. That just means that you're not using any sort of packages or middleware to kind of do the heavy lifting. If you're wanting to interact with MongoDB in itself, just kind of nothing in between, no translator or anything like that, then you can use these tools to do that and to find that. Basically making it look nice, or if you're wanting it to do certain things there, if you're wanting to remove documents, destroy documents, we can do that. So this is a great tool, and I would encourage you guys, as you guys are learning MongoDB, to play around with this, just to try it, right? See how this works, see how this operates. And then as we use Mongoose, we're going to get a little bit more familiar with that. And it will do a lot of the heavy lifting for us, which is a common thing. Last thing is there's some operators that if I wanted to do, like if I wanted to find a number of students, I wanted to handle this. Again, this is you going in and working with the actual database itself and wanting to do certain things. This is outside, just transparently, this is outside the realm of what you're going to need for the exam. I would encourage you guys to go learn, read the documentation. I'd encourage you to dig around with it. If you're looking at this and you're like, what the heck? I am confused and I hate this. That's normal, right? Especially if this is your first interaction with a database. That's a very, very normal thought. So it's okay. That doesn't mean you're not going to get it. That doesn't mean that you can't do it. It just is going to take a little bit of time. And B, that's a very common thing, hence why middleware is created. And I'll talk about middleware in a bit, but that's why Mongoose is created, because this sucks, right? People don't want to do this. This is terrible. And so Mongoose comes in and says, hey, instead of doing all that, just write the word .get and I'll do all the lifting, or .create and I'll just handle it, or find one by ID and then I'll go in and do all of this stuff for you. I'll do all the heavy lifting. And that's where you're like, oh, great. I love technology, right? So this is great information to kind of go through and read, but not super necessary for the exam. Great things for you to know. And for black belt stuff, this can be really helpful because I don't do a ton of black belt stuff, because the whole point of a black belt is you can do some, self-learning. But this will be helpful if you're kind of looking for black belt. So let me open up MongoDB Compass. There's a question in office hour, and then I'll ask questions here in a second. Question office hour, do you need Compass? Short answer, no. Long answer is it helps, at least for you visualizing and understanding at the beginning. So I would just say, if you can, download it. If you're really, really worrying about it, make sure that you kind of talk to me, and then there's some other ways that you can kind of deal with this. But here's MongoDB Compass. And so there's a couple things later that it's going to talk about, especially if you download Compass, it's going to talk about in the platform, the MongoDB shell. Well, you can interact with the shell right here, and you can think of that as just like your terminal. right? So in the same way, it operates the same way. If I wanted to do certain things, certain basics, if I wanted to, I think it's actually in documents. If I wanted to db.collection name dot, if I wanted just to see certain things, I could handle that through the shell, right? I could go in here and say db dot cities dot find. I could do all that. I don't ever use that. Just if I'm being transparent, I don't ever use that, but you can. Or you can just visualize it. This is a GUI, a graphical user interface. If I wanted to visualize this stuff, you can do this as well. So if I wanted to, let's take this food trucks DB. Then what I can do is I can see trucks. I go into trucks. And then here is my, this is my collection of trucks, right? So it's all my trucks, and these are each document. Now let me make this a little bit bigger so that way you guys can see. There's a couple things that are associated with our MongoDB document, right? Here I've got this reviews, and this is, again, if we wanted to handle this as above, not what you have to do for the exam, but if I wanted to connect to things that in the same way we would with a relational database, I could do that here. But don't worry about sort of reviews. The main things to take away is whenever something is created, MongoDB in its own, on its own, so you don't have to do it, we'll create this object ID. So I've talked a little bit about it when we're dealing with map or we're dealing with a unique identifier. This is what I'm talking about. And again, this is auto-generated. It's randomly created. So it's not like you've got to go in and create some sort of functionality. MongoDB does all that for you. And this is your unique identifier. So when we're looking up and trying to find the food truck called cheese, we are going to use this and say, hey, the one whose ID matches this guy right here, right? Think about it just like if you are a US citizen or wherever you're a citizen of, I'm assuming that you will probably have some sort of social security number or, some number that means that it is you, right? Somebody might have your same name, might be the same age, but they do not have the same social security number as like in the US. That's what we have, right? Same idea here with a document. There might be another food truck called cheese, but not a food truck called cheese that has the same ID. So this is our unique identifier. It's created for us. Here we've got and it's just a JSON object, right? So we've got a key value pair. Again, we are all super familiar with this. This one's got a name, cheese, style is American, description, delicious. And then we've got our created at and our updated at. This is going to be auto-generated as well. I'll show you how to do that tomorrow whenever we're building out our models. But this is going to be auto-generated as well. And these are really important tools for us to know, like if I'm creating a profile, right? And I want to have an anniversary of how long have you been on Facebook, using this created at is going to be really important, right? Because I can say, okay, well, when this created at is a year ago, or every year at this time, I want to say happy birthday or do some sort of functionality. That's all from this, right? We can also see, especially if you're working with an application, how many users have been created in the last 2 months to see our workflow and how popular our app is becoming. Or you can sort of think about updated at as last time things were edited. If you've got a password, right? That maybe it's super secure stuff. So you've got to redo the password every 90 days. Well, we're going to use this tool right here, right? This key value pair to say, hey, is this 90 days? If it is, then we need to prompt them to create a new password, right? That's outside of what we're doing. I just wanted to kind of give you an idea of what some of these would be. This is just your version. So if I update it, it's going to go to V1, V2, and then you can see how many iterations that this has been, like how many times this has been edited. Okay, now I'm gonna look in the chat. Are there any questions right now about MongoDB? While I look in the chat. Any questions? Somebody said, do you have a template for requirements for each belt? I do. And I will give you the requirements whenever I send out your belt exam. I'll also send out the requirements for you. I I got in trouble, so I'm sorry that you guys are a stack behind. I accidentally sent the entire requirements file, including black belt and everything. So it was very easy for students to like know exactly what they needed to do. You'll obviously know because whenever you get the exam, it'll say, here's what you need to do. So it's not anything sort of crazy, but I will, maybe I'll accidentally forget. I'm not sure. But yeah, Jared said Python was, yeah, we weren't supposed to. I think we got in trouble for doing that because we're kind of giving you guys a little bit easy stuff. So my bad there. Some people asking, what does V mean? This is the version. So like I was just saying, if this got updated, then this is now a new version of this. This has been updated one time, right? So the double underscore V is like, okay, it looks like I updated Spaghetti Factory. And maybe I spelled it wrong on the update. I'm not sure. Not sure why. This is,
No, I thought that was just the Italian accent.
yeah. Yeah, there you go. But I believe that is what this is supposed to iterate. I'm not sure why that didn't go up though. Let's look it up. That's what I thought it was. What is the V field in Mongoose? Oh, cookies, version key, internal revision of each document. Yeah. Okay. Great question though, guys. I saw a couple of people, so that's what I wanted. So Ravita said even the keys can be different. Yeah, they can, right? And that's part of the benefit of what a that's some of the benefit of what a non-relational database will allow is I can have an additional key. Let's say that I had a user that had a first name and a last name, and maybe they had a prefix or a suffix because they have a PhD, right? Well, maybe one user has a suffix and another user does not. Well, because of the flexibility, well, that user would just have a suffix key and the other user would not. So yeah, you can have different keys. Now we probably won't deal a ton with that just transparently in what we're doing, but yes, you absolutely can do that. So somebody said, why are there collections if they're never related to each other? Why not just a database and documents? Because it's still a collection is just, this is trucks, right? This is my truck collection. If I've got a, no, nope, trying to find one. Okay. I'm not going to show you this because this is from the actual, this is an exam. But I've got two different collections. It's still the same database, right? It's my pirate crew. But I have a collection of pirates and I've got a collection of users. And this is going to be all of my pirates and all of my users. So this is all of my pirate documents in one collection and all of my user documents in one collection. So it's just a way to still look at, because I'm still needing to say, hey, I want to go through my pirates and I want to see which one has the ID of this, right? That's why it still, I mean, that's from my understanding of why I would assume that MongoDB still puts them together instead of just having free reign, right? Because it still allows me to say, hey, go into my pirates collection and look for the pirate that has the ID of whatever. And then it does that.
So the two documents, is that just saying like there's 2 page worth of the objects?
Two entries, right? So this two documents, remember this entry itself is considered a document in the same way that in a SQL database, it was like an instance or you had, like if we're looking here, what we call documents, we just have a record. So you have like one user record and another user. So if I have 10 users, I'm going to have 10 different documents. It's just saying basically this is one instance of a user or instance of, in this case, a food truck. So I've got two instances of food trucks, cheese and spaghetti factory.
And the one index is,
So which one? I'm sorry.
Oh, up at the top right, it says 2 documents and 1 indexes.
Let's see. The ID.
So they don't have unique IDs or
They do have unique IDs, but this is in an index. I believe you can have multiple. Like if I wanted to create something else within this, which absolutely you guys don't need to do. But if I had some sort of other identifier, then I could create that here. But this one is just automatically created for us. And this is our unique ID. So this must be unique. It must be new. I'll give this here for you. If you guys want to look more into indexes. I'll do this one too. Okay. So that is MongoDB. Now, again, there's ways that I can go through and look through some of this and query some of these data, right? By using Mongosh, or I mean, obviously using the GUI, I can do quite a few things. But I can go and I can, if I wanted to insert into my trucks, I would say db.truck or db.trucks.insert. Then I'd insert the values. Cool. Everything good to go there. I can do all that within Mongosh. Now, the nice thing though, is we don't have to write some of this raw or vanilla stuff, right? I can use a tool, and this is really kind of where the power and something we're going to use is called Mongoose. Now, Mongoose is just our middleware that allows us to communicate to MongoDB, and it does all the heavy lifting. The way you can kind of think about it is, let's say you're going to another country, right? And maybe you know the language a little bit, and so you can try to communicate, but you have somebody who's a translator, right? And so you can just tell them what you want them or what you need, and they can go to the person or to the entity or whatever, and they can translate and say exactly what you need, right? And then they can take that and then give it to you in a way that makes you understand. So it takes their response and they give it back to you. This middleware operates essentially the same way, right? It's where instead of me having to go in and do some of this stuff, right? Instead of me having to go in and do like db.trucks.create and doing a whole bunch of stuff, what I can do is I can just use the middleware and say, here's what I want you to do. And then it will go, it will do what you ask, and it will bring you a response back, right? It will go, it will translate it into MongoDB, raw MongoDB code, and then it will bring back your response in the same sort of way that we're making a request and response. The middleware just does the heavy lifting for us, right? And Flask, if you guys took Flask, you had to actually write the raw SQL code. You don't have to do that here, right? Mongoose does everything for you. So if we're looking at Mongoose commands, there's a couple, like if I just want to find, I just say user.find, right? And that'll get you all an array of all documents in the user collection. Like if I have a collection called user, that's where that would be, right? I can even identify it more and say, I just want the users that are Jessica, right? Again, I just say user.find, I give one more piece of information, and it's going to give you all of the information back. This is going to make a lot more sense when we start building it together. But we can continue to do things like that. This one is going to be a really popular one. This is a page I would encourage you guys. Definitely go through this page and have an understanding over the next couple of days. You don't need to do it tonight because we haven't really built on it yet. But definitely go through this page and start having an understanding of how this is working, because this is what you will do for the exam. I can promise you that. This is exactly what we will do for the exam. So we want to make sure that you guys have an understanding of this, and then we can kind of connect the pieces, if you will. So again, this is just doing queries. It's just translating what we're wanting to do into Mongo, and then Mongo's giving us something back. And then we are taking that request and we're doing something with it. Yeah, just like Paul said, this is your CRUD. This is what you will have to do for the exam, but we're going to build it out and we're going to keep doing that. There are a lot of commands. Some of them have gotten, even, so like if we go to queries, updated. So I'm going to do some that are different than the platform. Again, as always, to show you there's more than one way to do it. And because some of this is updated. So like find by ID is different than find. And some of these, if we're looking through them, actually say, hey, use the by ID or use X, Y, or Z, because the other ones are being deprecated, which means that, hey, they're kind of older. We're getting rid of those. Support's not going to happen anymore. So, yeah, so we will use some different ones than the platform, but this is the middleware, the queries. I'll put this in the chat as well, that we will use as we build this up, as we start building our entire project. Now we're going to get to validations, but if you guys have done validations in other languages, you've seen it's very challenging. It's very, very, very simple here. We're going to build out our schema, which is confusing because it's called a schema, though we just say that it's not a schema. We'll talk about this in a second. When we're building that out, all we have to say is required true, and then we can create our own error message here, and that's it. That's all you have to do. Instead of doing any sort of other functionality, you just say required true, min length 6, max length 12. That's it. Very, very, very simple for what we can do from a requirement standpoint and validations. Okay. Great. Any questions on what we've talked about? So Cameron asked, what about email pattern requirements? We can do a couple different things. We can use regex. We can use different packages to see if it emails. You don't have to do that for your exam. So there is no email just to make sure it's an email pattern. I mean, obviously we could use our input and say it's type email. And so we're going to have some validations there. But you can use regex, or there's other packages that you can just say, hey, is this an actual email for that? Isaiah asked, do we need to bcrypt passwords? We will always use bcrypt for passwords. So we're going to get to that. We don't need to do that right now.
That's kind of the same as with the Python. They both kind of use some of those same operations.
Yeah, so we're still using bcrypt. Bcrypt is sort of your default, that and SHA 256 are your default encryption and encoding of your passwords. So yeah, we're still hashing, but it's not terrible. We use bcrypt, we'll bring it in. But hashing and salting are, yeah, it doesn't matter what language you're teaching and what language you're writing in, you're always going to want to use those. Always, always, always. Okay. Somebody asked, the page you're currently on is a snippet of a folder system in your PC, or is it some downloaded software snippet? So that's what we're going to talk about now. This is just your folder structure. This is not mine, but this is where we are going to move. Now, what I want is I just transparently, I might go about 5 minutes over. We started about 5 minutes late. So I still got, 10 minutes-ish. I want to make sure that we have this at least built. Tomorrow, we're going to start filling these in and connecting all of the pieces. And then Thursday, we're going to repetitiously do this, build it from scratch, do it all again. But right now, we just have this server folder in our server.js. And right now, our server.js has our route in there, right? Of like, okay, what do we want to do? Or really, it's our, when this gets hit, what do I want to do? We're actually going to break this out and modularize it. It's called modularizing our code, to where we are separating stuff from being in one single file. So moving forward, we will have a couple different folders within our server. So just so you know, the backend is a little bit more of a setup. It's not just npx create React app, client. There's a little bit more that we have to do. That's okay. We're going to Control C. We're in our server. Now what I'm going to do is I'm going to say mkdir. And what you can do is, let's follow this and see which folders. I need a config, a controllers, a models, and a routes. So I'm going to say mkdir config space controllers. So when I want multiple folders, instead of having to do mkdir config, mkdir controllers, I can just put a space and I'll do all of them. Models, routes. Now, if I say ls, I have all of that in there. And we see that we now have all of these folders. Moving forward, this is going to be how you do it. This is going to be how I do it. And we'll build it out again from scratch tomorrow so that way you guys can see. And we're going to really go through some of them tomorrow. I'm going to talk at a high level of what each one does, just right here. And then we can sort of dive into these again tomorrow. But I just want to make sure that our folder structure is broken out. And that way we have an understanding. Our config file is going to be pretty plug and play. If I'm just being blatantly honest, we're going to use Mongoose, and it's in our Mongoose section. So when we come to Mongoose, we're going to have our, we have now have to, in our server.js, we're going to make sure that we require Mongoose. So in any file, and just note, this is any file that you use the Mongoose library, we're going to do that. So sorry, I lied. It's not going to be in our server.js. Within each folder, we're going to have some sort of config or controller file or model file or routes file, right? And they're going to be named based on what we're doing or what the collection is, except for this config. For the config, I'm going to say mongoose.config.js. Now remember, these are JS files. They are not JSX because we're not trying to render on the front end. These are just JavaScript, right? We're in Node, and that's what we're working with. So first, I have to bring in Mongoose at the top of this. So I say const Mongoose. Mongoose equals require Mongoose. Now we've already npm installed it, and we can see that in our package JSON right there. But we're saying, hey, I want to use Mongoose on this file. And all this file is doing is this file is connecting my database to this product right here. This project. I was trying to think of the word, right? I'm going to copy this because it, you can just copy it, and sometimes Copilot gets it all messed up. One time I built an entire thing when it was like week 6 and I could not figure it out. And just because Copilot messed this code up. So now I don't trust it. I have commitment issues. Okay. So we are going to make a TV show database for this for today and tomorrow. So we're going to call this TV show DB. Just put it right here. Perfect. Now, what this is doing is this is saying, hey, Mongoose, I want to do .connect. And again, Mongoose is my middleware. It's my interpreter. It's me saying, hey, can you connect this? And it goes, yep, got it. Goes in, runs the code, this connect function, runs the code to make a connection to MongoDB. Here is what we call our connection string. If you ever are confused, if you have this GUI, you can just say copy connection string. Perfect. If I were to print this, let's see what it is. Localhost 27017. Perfect. Now I don't have, and what it's saying is cool. Connect to that, which we just saw that works. And then TV show DB. Now I've had a little bit of issues with Compass, if I'm being blatantly honest. Usually if you have this here and you're saying, hey, here is this database, TV show DB. What Mongoose should do is it should go in, and if that does not exist, it will create it. It will create that database for you. Sometimes I've had it show up late. Sometimes I've had it not show up. So just as a heads up, what we can do is if we go in here, we can create a database called TV Show DB, but we'll try to run it and see what's going on there. These are just part of our connection. These are part of what we need in order to connect. You don't need to touch these. You can just honestly copy and paste them if you're curious what they're doing. And then we have a promise, right? Because we don't know how long this connection is going to take. We are going to say, all right, then we need to we established a connection to the database, or we say, hey, something went wrong and here's the error. Something went wrong or here's the error. Cool. So now if I say no dash watch, no, server, let's see. We still get this, but let's get rid of the deprecation messages. Mongo will create a DB for you, but I did not get that. So that is an issue. I wonder if it's because I don't have a schema. And once I have all the information, then it will use it. Because then I go in here. Yep. Okay. So the reason it didn't work is because I needed to, in my server, go in and then require and say, hey, I want you to require this config, and that's going to create my connection. So if I were to say in my server JS, oh, why is this? Let's look at this. Require. So I'm just saying, is there anything up top? I don't believe so. Nope. I'm saying require. Let's try this. Because this is, I don't think I need to do dot server. I think I just need this. Let's try it. Ever hurts to try, friends. Okay. So we see that because I saved it and it updated, now we get this establish a connection to the database. Perfect. Right? That's what we said it was going to do. If everything went well, establish a connection to the database. Now let's come in here and refresh and see if I got my TV show DB. This thing keeps killing me. Disconnect. Oh, let's connect. See if we have it now. Nope. Sometimes this compass will show up and then it'll show up later. I'm not sure why, but we can assume that this was created for us because it should be. And we've established a connection to our database. So we know that it's working.
Hey, well, there's a question. Where did you put in the Mongols DB to get the address?
Yep. So right up here, well, it gives us the address, but if I just click these three dots and it says copy connection string.
Cool. Thank you.
Yeah, of course. And that'll come right here. It should just by default be this 127.0.0.1. This is the same thing as saying localhost. And this is 27017. Yeah, Tony, I'm thinking that's what it might be, is that because I don't have a collection yet, it doesn't actually create any sort of instance of a database because I don't have anything in there yet. That's what I'm
It
thinking.
did the same, like going through the terminal. I tried that yesterday. I created a database. It didn't show it until I made a collection.
Yeah, I think that's what it's saying. It's like, hey, I don't need to worry about creating this until there's actually something in there. So that's probably what it did for me, which we're going to create a collection tomorrow. So we can get there. But cool. I'm 5 minutes over. Would you guys like me to do one more file or I'll kind of leave it up to a vote? I'm going to kind of go through a little bit more, or do you want to kind of be done? I'm at my hour. So I want to make sure I'm cautious of your time. We can still go through this tomorrow and be very okay. I can create a collection or we can go for it. Okay. So if you have to leave, I fully understand this will be recorded as always. But I am going to go ahead and just create one model. And so that way we can actually see it in our database and it be good to go. Now you might ask yourself, why do we call it models if it is a collection? That's a wonderful question. It's the way that it works, unfortunately. But what we're going to do is we're going to create a model. And all a model really is though it says a schema and then it says, you know, that SQL databases have schemas, don't get confused. Really, it's just a blueprint, right? This is a blueprint for what our collection should look like, right? What a document within a collection should look like. And so let's go into it. I'm just going to copy this and we're going to change it for us. But I'm going to go in and I'm going to say TV show or show.model.js. So I'm going to go into my models and it's based again on my collection. So I'm going to say show.model.js. Perfect. At the top, I'm going to bring in Mongoose because I'm doing some Mongoose. I'm using the middleware, right, to create a new schema. Now I'm going to call this a show schema. And I have to be cautious of where, especially if I'm copying and pasting, I got to make sure that it is changed everywhere. And what this is doing is this is saying, hey, go ahead and create a new blueprint for a document. And a schema in itself is create a new collection, right? Now, what I will then do is I'm going to give it some information. So I'm going to give it a type. And so in this case, we're saying, hey, this is going to be a string. And this age is going to be a number. But what I'm going to do is I'm going to say name is fine. We're going to say genre. And then we're going to say release year is going to be type number, right? Genre is going to be a string. So this is just, hey, how are you going to save this? You're going to save it as a string or as a number. Cool. Then what I'm going to do is I'm going to say, okay, this is not going to be user. This is going to be show. Export show. And then this is saying, okay, great. Now that I've set up my blueprint, and I said, oh, great. Each show needs to have a name, a genre, and a release year. I then want to go into my mongoose.model. I want you to run this. And what it's going to do is if this is not already in there, like let's say I haven't already created a collection, this name is what it is going to use to create an actual collection. So if I'm looking at, you know, Pirate Crew, pirates is what is used because that's what was put here. So if it doesn't have anything, so if I just say show, now when I run this, I don't have anything in there yet. So we'll get to tomorrow, but this will then create a collection within my TV show database that then shows that has a name, a genre, and a release year. Now I can also say timestamps true. So I've got my key value pairs, comma, and I say timestamps true. And this is going to get me my created app, my updated app. Oh, Nando, I didn't even see that you asked that, but yep, I can do that right here. Right? This timestamps is true. It gives me created app and an updated app. Okay. So this is my model. This is me saying, this is my semi structure, right? These are the things I want. I can get in here and say that they're required. I can look at the validations, right? And if we look at this, I can do a few things. I can say the type, if it's required. if I just put true here, this is going to be a backend sort of a Mongoose. It'll just generate an error response for Mongoose. This is a custom. This is what we are creating is custom backend validations by doing this. Right? But if I just left it as true, that would be okay. I don't have to pass in this field, but it would just be generic. You will be asked to, as part of the exam, part of it, I'm just telling you now, will be that you just add something here. So that will be part of what you need to pass. So make sure that you guys are passing in. If you're going to say required, which you should, right? Because validations are going to be a thing that you need for the exam. Make sure you pass this in. And this is a custom validation, or else if we didn't have this, it would just be by default. See a couple people in the chat. Timestamps gives me my created at and my updated at. So I'm looking at stores. And I got no data, sick. From here. Because I add in this timestamps, it'll now handle this, right? And so anytime it gets updated, it'll handle that for me. Anytime it gets created, it'll give me that timestamp. And then it will also create an ID for me by default. I don't have to do anything there. Benjamin asked, why is timestamps outside the curly boys? That's a great question that I don't know the answer to. I'm not quite sure why Mongoose has it set up that way. Because remember, we're just going into Mongoose and saying, hey, create a schema, and this is the information you're passing through. I'm not sure why they did it that way. And then at the end, we're saying, okay, great. Create this collection, use this blueprint, show schema. And then I want to export show. And this is going to come in handy when we're dealing with our controllers and our routes. So we'll need to always make sure that we export show. Because also, if you think about it, I'm creating this information, but I'm not doing anything with it. So that I need to export it. Great. Okay. I'm 10 minutes over time, or 15 technically. Are there any questions about what we've talked about? Tomorrow, we're going to jump in and build out our controllers, and we'll build out our routes, and we'll actually start using some of this stuff. We'll use Postman to create, to edit, to read, to kind of do that stuff. Or maybe we'll just do create and read at the beginning, update, delete. Maybe we'll get through all of them tomorrow, and then we'll actually have a wireframe for the belt exam, or for what we're going to build in preparation for the belt exam. And then we'll, again, do it all again and build it all out. Are there any questions? So Jennifer asks, is a timestamp covering created and edited? Yeah, so it's create and update. And then anytime it gets updated, the update just updates by itself. So yes, it'll handle all of that. Any questions, friends? We did a lot today. Talked about a lot. Eventually, we're going to move this into our controllers. And so this server.js is just going to be a file that basically brings in everything that we need, sets up our middleware, and then we're going to modularize everything out. I believe that Mongoose schema does have a date type. Usually it's date time, or you can just do date. So let's see. Yeah, so it's just date. So if we want to just do a date instead of string, we would just do date. Somebody asked, is the timestamp in UTC? I'm not sure. We can check that tomorrow, because I think they're what, 7 hours ahead? We can check that tomorrow. Oftentimes they are. There is Boolean type as well. So just so you know that there are quite a few different types. Okay, any other questions? So maybe since Mongoose controls created at updated values, it keeps them out of the schema properties. Yeah, I'm not sure, Christian, maybe. Yeah, date time are different. It doesn't look like they even have a date time. Looks like they just have a date. So. Okay. Well, I'll stop the recording here. As always, I'll hang out for a second. Sorry, I went a little bit over. Just a lot of information. Wanted to make sure you guys have access to it and that you guys are, and we're all set up for quite a bit. So I'll stop the recording here and I will hang out here for a second.